505 words. There are those things that are placed on your shoulders you don't ask for. Nevertheless, placed there they are, and no amount of struggle will allow that burden to be lifted. You are forced to deal with it when you just wished it would go away and leave you alone. Yet, it's those things that in the end test your fortitude. That will to carry on in spite of it all. Moreover, it is these things that leave you to do it alone in the face of adversity. In the end, they teach you many things about life in general, and most importantly, about yourself. You find out just how strong you really are, and just how far you are willing to go to see it all to an end, regardless of the ending that is in store for you. You face these things with your head held high, getting back up no matter how many times your legs are cut from under you, or you try at least. Then there are the times when your shoulders become so weighted that when you fall, it's almost impossible to arise to the challenge just one more time. You hold out a hand, begging in your own way for help that never arrives. Once you realize that, you stubbornly find a way to get back up on your own one more time, and you're glad that the help didn't come, because it taught you the lesson of depend on no one but yourself. You are the only one you can count on, and when the debts are tallied up, you owe nothing to none, even though yourself are owed much, but you also know that you will never be repaid. Those burdens that are thrust upon you bring serious collateral damage. They can cause you to lose the few things that matter most. The one thing that you loved more than your very own life slips slowly away. You know no matter how hard you try, you cannot hold tight enough to keep it near you and to keep you anchored. And the reason only laughs when it sees what it has done to you and keeps adding to the burden because it knows it can, with impunity. These were the things you never asked for, never even wished on your enemies, yet they are laid at your feet with a smile. These things that took the very life from your very own soul. I have heard it said that if one can hold their head up and keep fighting no matter the adversity, they could at least hold on to their dignity. However, what good is dignity when there's nothing left to give anymore? Nothing left to fight for? When dignity is all that is left, what is the use? Dignity will not lessen the burden, will not bring back the things most preciously lost. 'Tis nothing more than a fool's game of ultimate hypocrisy, daring to dream a dream with the hope of never waking. The lilies are bleeding. My lilies are my most prized possession, hand-picked. I will only take the most supremely beautiful specimens. They must be white as an angel's wings, and oh, so soft and delicate to the touch, that you must be careful of the harm you bring to them. Perhaps it is selfish of me to hoard them as I do, but it is I who takes them first. It is I who will enjoy them. Their sweet, intoxicating scent, and their soothing touch. To listen to the lily's voice is to hear the sound of unrestrained magnificence, fine-tuned to stir the soul into a passionate uproar. It is for this reason that I keep my lilies, 12 at a time, at all times. I must hear the cry of my Rocher beauties, bear witness to their bleeding, and revel in the need they have for me. At first, even I, pious as I am, questioned this desire, but finding the answer proves such a splendor in its own right. It is seeing my lilies weaken into such a state that I am all they have left, as they are all I have left, that I derive a satisfaction indescribable to one who has not experienced them themselves. But nothing is perfect forever. One of my lilies has wilted. I must be off immediately to replace her.
I watched the smoke trail from my imitation of a cigarette, sway to and fro like the hips of a dancing woman. Within the bar, the sounds of the regulars maintained their octave that I had been listening to for the past 50 or so years. I keep my eyes to the glass of bourbon in front of me, not feeling the need to pan the crowd for any newcomers. But of course, when you least expect them, that's when they sit on the stool next to you.
Buy a girl a drink?
Her voice brought out the worst trait of mine, the one that placed me in this eternal void of unfulfilled wants and unforgettable regrets. I turned to the new girl and flashed a grin her way. With what, baby? My good standing with Joe here? I focused hard and flicked my glass with my finger. The sound brought the faithful bartender to my aid, and within moments my guest had a drink before her. "There you go, Tommy," Joe said, looking down. He was off again to tend to the regulars.
Wow, seems like you've made a friend during your time here. Must not think it foolish to serve the likes of you.
She held her fingers in a C shape around her glass for a second, then took hold of it, raised it to her lips, and took a delicate sip. "Likes of me, huh? Well, he knows the score, knows that I bring in tourists sometimes." She placed her glass down again, then peered at me with the usual stare given by her kind.
Let's get out of here. This place stinks.
"In a rush, are we? You're an anxious one."
I'm not in the mood for romance. Not that you would know what that means.
I know what romance means, but I am by no means a professional at the occupation. This one was sly. She knew my methods well. Perhaps tonight was the night. It was an evening much like this before, but I still had my methods. Hear that? That's my favorite song.
I don't care.
Don't you want to relax a minute? Listen to the melody?
I just want you.
If you want me, I'll go with you. But may I at least have a dance?
You're strange.
You're beautiful. She began to laugh. I felt a little more at ease.
What are you wanting, Thomas?
A second chance, just like everyone else here.
There are no second chances for you.
It doesn't hurt to try. You would too if you were in my shoes.
I was in your shoes once. How do you think I got where I am now?
In a bar with a washed-up soul, you deceived many.
I know my way around your ways.
Then you can follow my lead. I stood up and held out my hand. She glanced downward to her lap. Been asked to dance recently?
Never.
How did I guess? She took one more sip from her drink, then joined me at the center floor. In the midst of dying matches and refilling glasses, we swayed to the rhythm of regret, yet in this moment we shared in its reprieve. We stayed like this for the night's entirety, till the last of the patrons had left to return to their troubles. Likewise, I took her hand, and the two of us walked out to the street.
Thank you for showing a girl a good time,
she said. She stroked a strand of hair from her face, then peered up to me.
I suppose you would rather stay than come home with me.
I'll go wherever you want me to, baby. The night is ours.
The night is yours,
she responded.
I give it back to you.
She turned away from me and walked down the silent street. She turned back once more, as if to let me know what I was missing, but she continued on her way without me. Likewise, I returned back to my stool where 2 full glasses of bourbon sat untouched. Joe stepped over to them and asked if I was done. I gave no sign, and he took the drinks and poured them out. 2 wasted glasses of bourbon, 1 wasted life. Joe flipped off the lights, leaving me in silence till the regulars would return again. I thought of the girl and what could have been. Tonight wasn't the night, but one night it will be, as it was when I deceived the wrong woman, leading to my death. I now sat as a lonely, regretful spirit that haunts a place where those still living attempt to drown their own regrets. It beats the alternative which men like me deserve, and one evening I will face. But as of tonight, I still got it.
Vanishing twin syndrome. My mother says I murdered my twin brother. She says that I deserve to be locked up. But none of this is true. What happened to my brother wasn't murder. It was an act of survival. Technically, what happened is called vanishing twin syndrome. It is when one twin dies in the womb because it wasn't healthy enough to compete with the other. That's a fine explanation, but it's far too polite, far too clinical. It doesn't get at the truth of what really happened. The truth is, my brother didn't vanish. He got greedy. He started taking everything for himself, growing bigger and stronger, while I withered away into his shadow. It was clear that only one of us was going to make it out alive. I had to fight back. I had to kill him before he killed me. That's all there is to it, really. Just a fight for survival that happens far more often than most people would like to think. I honestly don't understand why my mother and everyone else made such a big deal about it. Sure, ours was the first case to happen outside the womb, but other than that, there really wasn't anything special about it. A mask. Will I ever be free? Will I ever be free of this tormenting life after death? To exist as a ghost, wandering in my own despair, just longing to be put back to rest. I remember how peaceful the long rest was. There I was, sleeping in my ancient tomb without a thought to the living. Complete solitude. I was not being a bother to anyone living, but all of that was snatched from me many years later. Everything I had in life, and even in death, were all taken away, gone. And I still don't know why to this day, and I probably never will. Suddenly the past came rushing back to me. I remember who I was, yet still not why I was here. I never did any ill deed in my life. I was born a human, for goodness sakes. Not this fiend, this creature lurking through the night. I am mad with anguish as I gloss over everything I have lost. This legend of campfire tales and nightmare fuel. The scary stories that small boys tell in the dark. But all I have left is this mask that taunts me so. I can't be separated from it. Everywhere I go, it trails behind me. Everywhere I turn, it follows me like a long-lost puppy. I passed by a graveyard. Lavender Town was its name, to be exact. Or at least, that was the town's name. The cemetery did not have a name that anybody knew of. There were many rumors and hoaxes surrounding it. Stories of how the dead came back to life, to haunt the living. The stories of buried corpses sucking victims in, or of ghastly hands clasping around the living. The most frightening of them all being a ghost, a devil, giving its trainer immense power, just to take it all away. But all I have to ask is, why? What sick, twisted monster would torture us so? I took out the mask. My mask. Except it wasn't always a mask. It was once my face. Hesitant, frail tears coming to its eyes as I gazed upon it. My face was once so beautiful. All I could do was to stare at the mask and weep silently to myself. I can never be free. Finding a hurt angel. It was a late April evening when he found her in the woods, a mile from his cabin. She was lying in the field, one of her 2 huge wings clearly broken. His eyes widened as he approached, seeing how her wings, her entire body, glowed. As he approached, he could hear her mutter in pain, in a language that sounded so sweet and so beautiful, yet was utterly incomprehensible. It took him an hour to get her home. He laid her on the guest bed, stomach down, and did what he could to bandage her many cuts and wounds. Gold-yellow liquid seeping out. Was it blood? He was cooking her soup when she awoke the next morning, smiling, with joyful tears falling down. She, in English, and a voice too beautiful to truly comprehend, thanked him. On behalf of heaven, she thanked him. He shrugged. He was only doing what a good Samaritan would have done. She didn't leave then. She couldn't. She was far too weak. So they bonded. He fed her a fair bit, trying to get her strength up, and they talked over his dining table. She learned that he had been out here in the woods for the past 6 years. Society hadn't been good to him. An orphan and a vagrant his whole life. He'd grown to despise human society, and society felt the same way toward him. It was all right, he said. He had everything he ever needed here. Besides, he left his old life behind, back in the city, and he didn't like to talk about it. She told him God loved him, and he always had been loved. He listened, but didn't. He just fed her and nursed her back to health. Eventually, he started to feel things for her. She was truly lovely and truly divine, with her long, slightly curled golden hair, and her brightly lit eyes that dripped with love. He almost began to reconsider his plan. Almost. The day she stepped outside, stretched her wings, and readied for takeoff, was when he smashed her in the back of the head with a hammer, making her drop like a rag doll. It wasn't difficult cutting her up. Really, it was no different from all the other people he had done it to, though he was not disappointed when he bit into the first batch of cooked meat. It was amazing. He never thought that this could exist. Human meat was nothing compared to this. Nothing. Hours later, he was finished eating, and a month later, he had eaten up all the meat he'd cooked of her, hanging her wing bones up on his wall as a trophy. He looked on them with pride. Yes, he left his old life behind, but something, Providence, had given him this delightful treat, where he could refresh his old activities. For the rest of his life, he never forgot the taste of angel meat. Assassin's last job. The first thing you should know about me is that I'm an assassin, and I'm the best you'll ever find. I pride myself with my professional reputation. I never take sides. I never leak information. I always complete my contracts, and I only take out who I'm paid to. The only jobs I reject are those that involve burying someone alive. It is my worst fear. I can't even stand to watch it happen on TV. You might think a gun for hire should be a little less empathetic. I'm not a sociopath, and I certainly don't enjoy killing. I'm just skilled, and people will pay a lot for skills like mine. Actually, the title gun for hire isn't strictly accurate. My speciality is that for additional fee, of course, I'll employ a particular cause of death. Some clients pay to have their enemies strangled violently in their sleep. Others want former lovers poisoned covertly. I've killed hundreds and hundreds of ways, but never been caught. Until now. At 9:46 this morning, the man on my front doorstep introduced himself, and my heart stopped when I recognized his name. I had been asked to poison a very wealthy older lady a few months ago with a particularly nasty toxin that causes convulsions and agony for hours before death. It was a request from her daughter, who had become impatient for her inheritance and presumably must have had some other grievances, considering the sadistic streak. But before me now stood her beloved son, with his pistol aimed at my gut. After all these years of careful infiltration and evidence scrubbing, someone finally managed to find me. A dark, twisted smirk withered its way onto his face as my face paled. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm not here to kill you. I just wanted to deliver a message. My mother was in increasingly excruciating pain for 8 hours before she passed, screaming from this world. I know my sister organized it, and oh, she'll pay for it. But I want to cut that heartless witch up myself. As for you, you need to learn a lesson." Then he told me about his sister's murder. Mutilated, he said, tortured for days, starved and dehydrated and flailed alive. My mother. This man has my mother's home and work addresses, phone numbers, all compiled in a report. He showed me pictures of her, detailed pictures. I feel so sick. He said if I didn't complete his plans, he'd bury me alive. At least he offered his sister's inheritance as payment. I live in Osaka, Japan, and often use the subway to go to work in the morning. One day, when I was waiting for the train, I noticed a homeless man standing in a corner of the subway station, muttering to himself as people passed by. He was holding out a cup and seemed to be begging for spare change. A fat woman passed by the homeless man, and I distinctly heard him say, "Pig." Wow, I thought to myself. This homeless man is insulting people, and he still expects them to give him money? Then a tall businessman went by, and the homeless guy muttered, "Human." Human? I can't argue with that. Obviously he was human. The next day I arrived early at the subway station, so I decided to stand close to the homeless man and listen to his strange mutterings. A thin, haggard-looking man passed in front of him, and I heard the homeless guy mutter, "Cow." Cow, I thought? This man is much too skinny to be a cow. He looked more like a turkey or a chicken to me. A minute or so later, a fat man went by, and the homeless man said, "Potato." Potato? I was under the impression that he called all fat people pig. That day at work, I couldn't stop thinking about the homeless man and his puzzling behavior. I kept trying to find some logic or pattern in what he was muttering. Perhaps he has some kind of psychic ability, I thought. Maybe he knows what these people were in a previous life. In Japan, many people believe in reincarnation. I observed the homeless man many times and began to think my theory was right. I often heard him call people things like rabbit or onion, sheep or tomato. One day, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to ask him what was going on. As I walked up to him, he looked at me and said, "Bread." I tossed some money into his cup and asked him if he had some kind of psychic ability. The homeless man smiled and said, "Yes, indeed, I do have a psychic ability. It is an ability I obtained many years ago. but it's not what you might expect. I can't tell the future or read minds or anything like that. Then what is your ability? I asked eagerly. The ability is merely to know the last thing somebody ate, he said. I laughed because I realized he was right. He said bread. The last thing I had eaten for breakfast that day was toast. I walked away shaking my head. Of all the psychic abilities someone could have, that one must be the most useless. I mean, wait, human? Walking down the stairs. Melissa doesn't want to go down into the basement. She might be 18, but she's still scared of the dark. It doesn't help that the light bulb only illuminates a small portion of the room. It only reaches the last step. She takes a deep breath and takes a step. The aging wood creaks. The stairs are wobbly, threatening to fall apart under her weight. Melissa carefully makes her way down. She keeps her eyes on her shifting feet. One wrong step, and she could fall. At last, she makes it to the bottom. Melissa sighs in relief and reaches for the rusty light string, only to grasp something soft and slick, something oily, something thick, something that feels like hair. Poor Melissa. She really should have looked up on her way down. My head. Some days my head works, some days not. Even on the days it does, it varies from crystal clear to vague muddiness. This thing is buried deep in my brain, causes that. Where it came from, I have no idea. Maybe it was caused from cell phones or high-tension electrical wires. It doesn't really matter where it came from. It is there, and there is no changing that fact. I have quit asking where and why. The doctors do not seem to know either. They said these things just happen. Nice theory, Doc, if you really don't care. Along with not knowing, just so long as you get enough out of me, and the other poor people I see sitting in the waiting room, whenever I come to pay you a visit. So take the next vacation, or buy your lovely wife her next BMW. Goodness knows the newness has worn off the other one you bought her last year. How's Junior doing in college? Good, I hope. We need another spoilt jack running around town in 4 years, telling us all what we need to do and how to live our lives. Oh no, Mr. Jack, my mac and cheese is just fine. How is your filet mignon? Good, you say. I'm so very glad. No, Mr. Jack, I have not been able to find another job since the plant closed. But as soon as I do, I will come by and give you what I owe you, so I can get my lights turned back on. Why, yes, Mr. Jack, there will be plenty of leftover for me to buy my wife and kids some more mac and cheese. Heck, there might even be enough left to add a pack of hot dogs and a head of lettuce. That way we can all have a well-balanced meal. That's okay, we don't need Rover anyway. I'm sure the pound found him a good and loving home. It's such a wonderful feeling, knowing that there are people like you in the world looking out for people like my family and me. Knowing that gives me that warm and fuzzy feeling deep inside my soul. Heaven knows they want what is best for us, and they know more than we do how to go about that. Those Harvard and Yale educations teach them so much more about the world than any of us could ever have learned by just living in it. Instant messaging. It all started on the 14th night of March, the night of my parents' 20th wedding anniversary. It was a wonderful sunny day, if memory serves. Surprisingly warm for before the beginning of spring. The beautiful weather was perfect for the atmosphere of the day. Being married for 20 years is obviously a monumentous occasion, so my parents had booked a table at our favorite Italian restaurant. Of course, this was a formal occasion, so I had my best dress on. It was 5:33 p.m., and I was just straightening my hair when my phone went off. I'd received a message. That's strange, I thought. That never happens. I checked the message. It was my mom. It was quite a jumble of numbers and letters, but through the vocabulary stew, I could make out one legible phrase. Please help me. It should go without saying that this worried me greatly, so I immediately replied, "Are you okay?" Just as instantly, I got another text message which read, "Oops, pocket text." I sighed with all the relief I had and continued to prepare myself. A few minutes later, I received yet another message, this time from my dad. It was a massive mixture of letters and numbers, with the phrase "help me" concealed within. Creepy though it was, my dad always was a joker, so I presumed he was just joking around, until I was sent another text saying, "Oops, pocket text." Now this sparked panic, pure, unmistakable panic. Exactly half a minute passed when I received the exact same two messages from my sister. This could not be coincidental. It just couldn't. In a state of sheer anxiety, I started to run to the restaurant. I made it about a quarter of the way before I was stopped by a police officer. "Main road's closed," he said. "Huge car crash." This was the exact moment I realized just what had happened. I demanded to see the wreckage, a request which I was surprised was allowed. When I got there, it wasn't the remains of the car that caught my eye, nor the flames billowing from the destroyed vehicle. No, I was horrified to see the lifeless corpses of my mother, father, and sister. I asked for the estimated time of their deaths. All three of them were killed instantly by the collision at 5:32 p.m., a full minute before the very first text. The fantasy. When do we give up the fantasy? Do we give it up when we become adults, doing as the Bible says and put away childish things? On the other hand, do we hang on to it until we finally give up the ghost, venturing beyond this veil of life into the unknown? I have tried my utmost to give this fantasy away, to let it loose so some other fool could grasp onto it. This wisp of the wind to ride into their own brand of hell. Yet, is it so wrong to hold on to the fantasy? To wish beyond all reason that it will one day become reality? However, you can only lie there in the dark, your bones aching at the very thought of one day it might just come true, your heart pounding to the point of bursting, while in your mind the truth lies there like a serpent, cold and unfeeling, waiting to strike. Then the pain of wrongs, both real and imagined, comes crashing through to make your soul bleed once again. Alone. Ever feel like you're being watched? Awful feeling, isn't it? You can feel the eyes on you, watching you. You aren't sure what emotion they're watching you with. It could be lust, it could be hatred, it could be fear. You're not too sure, but you know you don't like it. You quickly run through a mental checklist. Did I lock the door tonight? Is my alarm set? Are the windows drawn? You answer yourself in the affirmation in all cases, and relax just a little. You're in your cozy little house, safe from the outside world, alone. You still feel it, the eyes pressing down on your neck, just watching you go about your business. You know you're safe. You did lock everything out, right? But then a thought enters your head. What if someone was already here? A simple answer, really. That just means instead of locking him out, you locked him in, with you, alone. Your heart starts to race. Your eyes look at every corner. Every little subtle movement in the corner of your eye is a potential stalker, and you know he won't be happy if you ruin his evening. He's very apt to ruin yours if you do. You finally run to your room, your heart pounding against your chest. You lock your bedroom door, not having learned your lesson about locks. So you sit here in your room, sitting nervously on that oh-so-comfy bed of yours, alone. You're still not content. You check every brightly lit corner. Under your bed has proven clear at least a dozen times. And you know your closet is empty, so you breathe a sigh of relief and sit comfortably on your bed. You scold yourself for being such a child. You go and wash up for the night and make yourself comfortable, partially to mock your fear this evening. You sleep extra light tonight. You finally convince yourself to turn off the light and slip comfortably into your bed. You drift quietly off to sleep, a smile on your face. You are now safe and sound until the morning. So you sleep, mocking your phantoms with your quiet slumber and skimpy nightwear. You sleep, alone. Finally, you're asleep. Such a bothersome evening this has been. So inconvenient and fruitless. Finally, you're convinced that you're alone. And you are. With me.
I didn't have a voice until you read this. Let me explain. I was voiceless but still existed. We all did. We have been here ever since the first men peered fearfully out of their caves into the deep, still darkness beneath a moonless sky, and thought, what could be hiding out there? Us. We were. I've been with you since you were a child. Remember those times when you awoke in the night, inconsolable, tears streaming down your precious face, until the grown-ups came in and reassured you? There's nothing there, they'd say. There's nothing to fear. They were wrong. It was me, under your bed, in the wardrobe, under the stairs. It was always me. I'm with you now, constantly. Your fear has bonded us forever. When you see that flicker of movement out of the corner of your eye, as you walk home on a deserted street at night, when you hear that creaking floorboard just outside your bedroom door, as you cower underneath your blankets, the panicking sensation on the back of your neck, as if you're being watched. It's always me. It always was. I'm not a demon, not a ghost. I'm not a monster, or some creeping boogeyman. My kind are what we are. We come from belief and fear. That irrational fear of the dark, the terror of the unknown, the horrors that tiptoe through your nightmares and return suddenly, without any warning during the waking hours, filling you with dread. You know it's silly to be scared. You chastise yourself, face flushed, tutting and sighing. chiding your rogue imagination for such fanciful and nonsensical behavior. But you do it again and again and again. There's a part of your brain that won't be told otherwise. Maybe that's what keeps us here. Or maybe we're the reason it won't ever be quiet. Which do you think it is? I know, just like I know, that your mind is the world's greatest gift to us. Until you started to read this, I didn't have a voice. Now, as your treacherous consciousness speaks these words aloud, inside the confines of your mind, it's my voice you're hearing. Thank you. It seems strange to me. Not the voice that I would have chosen, but it's the one with which your fear has bequeathed me. The voice that haunts you the most, the tone most likely to cause you to shiver and break into a cold, helpless sweat, has become mine because of what we share. And we have shared a lot, you and I. A whole lifetime. Every single day. I'm watching you now, studying you as you stare nervously at your glowing screen, praying that its light will be enough to protect you from the things in the shadows. I watch you all the time, even when you're sleeping. I stood at the foot of your bed, gazing down at you. I know when you're thinking of me. I hear the whispers and the gasps. I see the involuntary jolts and shudders, and I smile. You're picturing me doing it, aren't you? Go on. Imagine me standing there in your room, my shadow looming over your prone, terrified body, my wide grin showing my glinting teeth in the moonlight. Thank you. Before you did that, I never had a face. Now you've given me one. The face of your darkest phobias. I like it. It was the only face I could ever have worn. In the short time it's taken you to read my story, you've given me a voice and a face. I wonder what gifts you'll bestow upon me tomorrow. Maybe, in time, I'll be able to touch you. Just imagine my hot breath against your ear, my icy fingers on the nape of your neck, my teeth and claws sliding into your trembling, yielding flesh. Thank you. Oh, what fun we shall have. Find me. In 2003, a photograph depicting a lost child began circulating on the internet. There was no detail on the child other than what was seen in the actual photo, and could be found under the search parameters find_me.jpg. The photo showed a smiling young girl, about 8 or 9 years old. The girl is seen standing alone in front of a swing set, wearing a purple dress with a white flower in her hair. Her name, or where she was seen last, were never mentioned. Circulating the internet through emails and pop-ups, the girl was seen by millions but never found. 1 year to the day after the photo initially began its circulation, the image returned to the internet. Text on the photo stated, "Find me," but now the photo had changed. The swing set was battered, the paint rusting and chipping away, and the swing hanging by a single chain. The girl appeared older, and her smile had faded into a look of indifference, and the white flower in her hair began to wilt. The image reappeared the following year, to the date, with further alterations. The swing set was now broken in half, the chains and seat on the ground. The girl was again older and now crying, her flower now dead, and her dress dirty and torn. "Find me," was written in red text across the bottom of the photo. The third year, the photo returned. The swing set was now gone, and a strange man was standing in the distance watching her. The girl was older. Her sadness turned to anger, and her dress was a tattered rags. "Find me," was written in larger text on the photo. The fourth year showed the same girl, now a teenager, with the strange man standing directly behind her, a camera in his hand. The girl had been beaten severely,
her face bloodied and battered. She is now glaring with hollow eyes, her dress nothing more than bits of torn fabric. The text below then read, "Please find me." The 5th year, the photo returned, but now the girl was dead, her body posed upright with a white flower tucked in her hands. The text on the photo read, "Why didn't you find me?" The 6th year, the photo circulated again. There was no one in the photo. It showed only a strange field where the broken swing set once had sat. The text below read simply, "I found you." Shortly thereafter, strange deaths began occurring. Each death revolved around a theme. The victims were always men, and each man had opened the file featuring the photo. The men were all found in a field, with a white flower tucked in their hands. "I found you," was written across their face in their own blood, after they had been beaten to death. Déjà vu. I was there as you drew your first breath, watching as they cradled you in their thin, bony arms. You were so beautiful, a divine being among mere peasants that didn't see all I did, didn't feel all I felt. I could tell my little godling was going to be far more amazing than their puny minds could comprehend. We became friends for a while. I was always there for you, and you for me. It was like Elysium had come at last to my old soul. It was exhilarating. I loved you and lusted over you. But society warped and twisted you. It made you question, even just a little bit. You still question the paranormal. Eventually, you found your way back to me through the internet sites and your friends talking about scary stories. That is what made you remember me. You knew I was real, at least at one point in your life. So you went on your computer, locked yourself in your room, turned off all the lights, and started some ritual that you read about online. I was intrigued by it and the complexity of it all. And when you finally set the small skeleton of a bird down next to the top of your makeshift altar, I felt the pull. I hadn't felt it in ages. Years had gone by, practically death, wondering where you were or if you wondered about me. I had to know if your mind had resurrected thoughts and feelings I instilled within you oh so many years ago. So I came forth. You were startled at my appearance. I couldn't blame you. I was a smoky black figure, wearing a cloak over my thin, frail body, with mangled feathered wings. You tried not to scream, and I wondered at why you screamed in the first place. But then I realized I'm not what you're accustomed to seeing. I pressed my long, bony finger that ended in a claw up to my lips to shush you, and it worked. You stared at me in horror, and I knew I had to get you out of there. "Come, my dear," I spoke without speaking, in a whispery voice that soothed you as it enveloped your shaking form. "It is time for you and me to be reunited." You fell unconscious, and I waved my hand across the room, wiping all trace of your existence from your home. Your family and friends would never know you were gone, if you never existed. I mean, you did, but any time anyone would try to remember something, they just couldn't. It was because of that. Because I changed reality itself, so that you could return home with me, to the very lucky and few people like us. I gave you a new home, a new life, all in that instant. Not many people get that kind of experience, you know. Well, not that you would. Have you ever went to a room and forgot why you were there in the first place? Or thought of someone, maybe like a brother you never had, and just thought it was a dream? Or thought you heard someone call your name? All of those times, it was people who had been taken away by creatures like me.
You simply call it deja vu. When you awoke in your new black clothes and your new home, in your new world, I remember how shocked you were. You were so happy when you met all those other kids like you. You were so excited and nervous. So much like when you opened gifts from your family and friends on holidays and special occasions. It was beautiful. And now, here you are today, in yet another new life. I'm sorry to have told you all this, and tricked and lied to you all those years. But the reason why you may not feel like you don't quite fit in with your family is because you never were theirs. You were mine. And the other families, no one else's. And now you're just like me. So go, my child, and help make others like us.
Voiceless!